In just a few hours' time at the Emirates in London, Arsenal will have a rematch with Paris Saint-Germain. And when you take a look at the head-to-head here, Arsenal is the leader. Arsenal is tied for competition 9 out of 12 games with wins. PSG has 8, but they had to play 14 games to go through that knockout phase. The two sides even at 30 goals apiece. Defending has been the biggest difference between these two. PSG allowing 14 goals to Arsenal's 7.
If Arsenal, their fan base, especially the players, are thinking that this match will be anything like the match that we saw last time, delusional. It's not going to be, because the number one thing, and we see the players on there, and the man in the middle right there, you start with Lee Kang-in. The big storyline going into this tie, into this match, was that Ousmane Dembélé, because of disciplinary issues, showing up late ahead of this match, was left off the squad. Lee Kang-in, he's a good player on his day, but he's nowhere close to what we're seeing from Ousmane Dembélé. And I thought that this sent a message to PSG, and this was the beginning of something very good. It really showed itself in that match against Manchester City, where he came off the bench and just demolished him. Warren Zaire-Emery as well in the midfield. He's having a sophomore slump. You have Fabian Ruiz, who would have played on the left. Neves on the right. So this PSG side, they looked more revitalized. They looked more focused. And also, no Kubica Kvaratskhelia. So there's a lot of missing elements to what we see now. And Gigi Donnarumma is a different goalkeeper. In this game, the 2 goals that Arsenal scored, he was at fault for both of them. Came out for the missing punch. Remember, we were talking about Champions Club. And then the second one, the Saka free kick. I mean, the ball's in the back of the net. So not the same GGs we're going to see tonight on the big stage.
But really quickly, the one thing I think that they can take away from that game is that set-piece dominance. And everything that Arsenal do on set pieces, that's not going to change, and I think that's going to be such an important part of this series. And that's one thing they can take from that, because you're right, Lahoud, a whole lot has changed for both of these teams since that day.
Yeah. And Donnarumma needs to be very careful there, because he's going to get challenged. But I do agree with you. The first half of the season was questionable, and then he slowly started building confidence. There were specific moments, I think almost that in the Champions League history, he's been indebted to this PSG fan base because of errors that can be specifically attributed to him, but he's made up for it. And this season, it feels like he's on a revenge tour. So hopefully for him, that just keeps on increasing.
Both Arsenal and Paris are looking to win that first ever Champions League title. What are some of the other storylines you guys are keeping your eyes on?
Oh, look, you go on a Champions League night to the Emirates, right? The Emirates has been an absolute fortress this season, especially on big European nights. You think of Declan Rice, who you put in your Ballon d'Or tier, and Declan Rice, who we will be talking about in this match. Champions League nights, European nights, the Emirates, getting the crowd. Mikel Arteta said, bring your boots to Arsenal fans. And I almost brought my boots to work today because of it. So the Emirates has to be that fortress. Number 2, midfield mashup. No Thomas Partey, in my opinion, no Partey for Arsenal in a game like this. But the midfield, whoever wins that midfield wins this tie across 180 plus minutes. And then managerial masterminds. Nico, you and I have been waxing poetic about these two managers. They don't have a recognizable striker right now, and they still have found a way to get both their sides into the Champions League semi-finals. It's going to be a hell of a chess match between the two Spaniards.
And two managers that know each other quite well. So when you dive a little bit deeper, who would you say has the edge between Arteta and Luis Enrique?
Oof, I got to give a bit of the edge to Mikel Arteta. The fact that the first leg is at the Emirates, and Mikel Arteta, he's been on a bit of a revenge tour of his own of battling against mentors. We think of what he's done to Pep. We think of what he's done to, in terms of Real Madrid and maybe not a mentor in Carlo Ancelotti. I think there's a bit of a psychological edge that Mikel Arteta does have going into this tie.
Yeah. Listen, for me, Mikel Arteta's not there yet with Luis Enrique. Luis Enrique, we can call him a mastermind. I think Mikel Arteta needs to win some major silverware to be sitting at the same table as Luis Enrique. He very well might. He's an extraordinary manager, and he thinks with a very progressive, modern outlook of the game. There's a lot of guys that are in the similar ilk, just like Xabi Alonso winning the Bundesliga, undefeated style. Let's see where he progresses into a more elite category when he moves on. But winning the Champions League, I think, would put him at the same level as Luis Enrique.
What about defensively? Who would you say has the edge in this one? Arsenal or Paris Saint-Germain?
For me, it's Arsenal. I mean, what?
It's pretty self-explanatory now.
Honestly,
that's all part of it, and it's going to be.
How much have they been trailing in Champions League? A couple of minutes at best, the entire Champions League. So if we look at this edge, we see PSG having the managerial edge, but defense, Mikel Arteta basically has given this team a defensive bread and butter, and then you build on from there, and there's so much quality going forward. So I would give Arsenal the edge on defense, although PSG. Listen, I really like Pacho, and Marquinhos is Marquinhos, right? He's an extraordinary center back. The fullbacks, they're more offensive than defensive, and sometimes they get caught, and that might be a moment where Arsenal can inflict some danger.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. The fact that Jakub Kiwior has stood up to be accounted for, and I thought was outstanding across both legs. That hole, I was having doubts when Gabriel went out. Kiwior stepped up big.
Everyone did.
Everything for Mikel Arteta's back line.
Yeah.
Who wins the midfield?
For me, the midfield, I gotta go with PSG. The fact that you're missing Thomas Partey in the first leg, I think, is a big one, and that might be the difference maker. But the way that PSG controls the game through that midfield, and everybody has a different role, and really expresses that role when they're playing at their best, because they had moments against Aston Villa where they were sloppy. They were not. Vitinha was giving passes away, but Vitinha at his best doesn't lose the ball. Vitinha opens up the game. So does Fabian Ruiz when he drops in between the center backs, and he's extremely mobile and fluid. João Neves in his recovery. So for me, just slightly, PSG wins the midfield.
Nico, what do you think is going to play out in this first leg? Are they going to try to control the game with the ball with that midfield, or are they maybe going to look to hurt Arsenal in transition and say, hey, we might drop a little bit deeper and kill you in space? So is it going to be field control or ball control?
No, I think this is going to be a battle for control. You mentioned midfield mashup, right? Both of these teams like having the ball, and I don't think PSG is necessarily a team that will say, you have it a little bit more and I'll drop a little bit further back. This is a team that doesn't change depending on who they play. They know who they are, and I really like that between the two managers, because there's not really like a particular star that they play through or that they adjust their identity because of that one superstar. Arteta and Luis Enrique are very faithful to their ideas, and I think that's going to be the battle that we're going to see tonight.
We've seen both teams be pretty even on goals, but who wins in the attack?
PSG. I mean, they're so good. The
They got Trossard.
Yeah, they're missing all of their attackers. I don't know. This is PSG. This was pretty clear to me. The quality that they have and the way that we've seen that quality blossom. For me, it's better than Arteta.
All right, finally, what are the intangibles in this one?
This is strange. I had a lot of trouble choosing this one, because historically the intangibles in the Champions League recent history, right? The team that's going to get stuck in and fight and not have ghosts of the past. PSG is riddled with ghosts of the past. They're trying
ghosts
to bury
like yesterday.
the hatchet, right? And Arsenal as well. In the Champions League, haven't been at this stage since 2009. This is a team that has always been like the joke, the fourth place team. They always make Champions League, but never win anything, right? But now they're back at a level where they can really seriously dream of winning the Champions League. So it's almost like those intangibles, I need to be convinced by that after this series. But after going through Real Madrid and showing that personality to go to the Bernabeu, not cower when sometimes the momentum shifts against you, I think Arsenal's that team. I mean, you could also say the same thing about PSG with going to Anfield, but there's something about Arsenal and having something to prove, as opposed to PSG where all the pressure is on them and sometimes they do cave. It's a very young team.
This PSG side is young, and that was a young player. And I know this about being young, learning your lessons. We'll see if they've learned their lesson. For the tie against Aston Villa, I know a lot of people talk about they almost gave the game away. I think that Thomas Partey, in this first leg, Mikel Merino, and I think Jeff made a good point about different aspects of his game. That is a drawback, his ability to be mobile. And for this PSG side, the intangibles of not even being able to fit Bradley Barcola and Desiree Doué on the pitch. I just think that youthful exuberance going back and forth. If Arsenal go and try and be open, I think that's advantage PSG across both legs.
I would say so too, and I think particularly in this first leg, I'm looking on this flank, whether it's Barcola or Doué. Miles Lewis-Skelly has not been dribbled past more than one time, I think, over his last 1,500 minutes. Doué, Barcola, whoever it is, they need to be an outlet, and they need to be able to create chances and create danger if Arsenal are going to have a little bit more of the ball, as I'm assuming.
Look at the quality. It just feels like a proper fight from teams that are very true to their identity. You can pick out matchups all over the field, but I do think because these two teams are so wing heavy or wing focused, especially the fullbacks as well, right? That's an opening for Hakimi and Mendes, who love running those central channels, for Timber and Lewis-Skelly, who love inverting. It's going to be very tactically rich, and it feels like it's going to be not settled in the first leg, probably going to go to the wire in the second leg, and it's going to be jab, 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 jab the whole moment, and then later towards the end of the second leg, the first person that blinks gets the knockout. But there's quality all over the pitch here.